The Billionaire's Heir. A love born from a desperate plea. Subscribe to our channel and hit that like button to dive into a story that will pull at your heartstrings and challenge everything you thought you knew about destiny. Hello, beloved listeners. How are you doing today? Welcome to our cozy corner of heartfelt stories. Today, I've brought you a tale that will deeply move you. It's the story of Alara and Ethan, two childhood friends who grew up worlds apart. He became a self-made billionaire entrepreneur, while she remained a simple woman with an enormous heart. Until one day, Ethan approached her with a proposal that would change everything. "Alara, I need an heir to secure my empire. Would you help me?" And guess what she did? She accepted instantly, but not for the money. She had a far deeper reason, something she had kept hidden for years, something he never could have imagined. Tell me in the comments, what are you doing while listening? Are you at work, commuting home, enjoying your afternoon coffee, or preparing dinner? I love knowing how you experience these moments with us. If you're already curious to uncover Alara's secret, leave a heartfelt like and get comfortable, because this story has twists that will take your breath away. Let's begin. In the bustling city of Viridia, England, two families lived in completely different realities, separated by mere blocks, but an almost insurmountable social chasm. On Maple Lane, number 47, lived the Miller family in a modest two-story house with a wooden door that always creaked when someone entered. Alara was 7 years old when she met Ethan, and even at that age, her large, expressive hazel eyes captivated anyone who looked at her. Her dark curls cascaded over her shoulders, always tied back with colorful elastic bands her mother bought at Mr. Henderson's corner shop. Her father, Arthur Miller, worked as a mechanic at TechWorks Garage, earning about £1,800 a month, while her mother, Eleanor, sewed baby clothes on commission, bringing in an extra $400 when orders were good. On the other side of the neighborhood, on the elegant Oakwood Drive, stood the imposing Blackwood Manor, a grand 4-story estate with enormous gardens spanning an entire city block. Richard Blackwood, the family patriarch, had built a construction empire with companies spread across the UK and contracts worth millions annually. His grandson, Ethan, was an 8-year-old boy with dark hair always perfectly cut at Viridia's most exclusive salon. His blue eyes contrasted with his fair skin, and his posture already showcased the refined education he received at St. Jude's Academy, where tuition cost £2,500 a month. Fate brought these two children together on a sunny Thursday afternoon in late March 2010 at Willow Creek Park. Alara had gone there with her grandmother, Martha, a 70-year-old woman who always took her to play after school from Greenwood Primary. Ethan was with his nanny, Betty, a 60-year-old woman who had worked for the Blackwood family for over 15 years, earning £2,000 a month to care for the boy on weekends when he visited his maternal grandmother. "Can I play with you?" Alara asked when she saw Ethan alone on the slide, playing with the latest smartphone his father had given him for his 8th birthday. She wore a floral dress her mother had sewn with such care and slightly worn branded sneakers, but her smile was so genuine and bright that Ethan immediately looked up from his device. "Sure you can. I'm Ethan. What's your name?" he replied, putting his phone into the pocket of his designer shorts. "Alara, you're not from this neighborhood, are you? I've never seen you at school," she said, approaching and sitting beside him on the colorful slide. "I study in Highfield, at St. Jude's. My grandma lives nearby, on Oakwood Drive," Ethan explained, trying not to sound superior. Alara wasn't quite sure where Highfield was, but she found the way he spoke interesting, always so proper, as if he had memorized words from a book. From that day on, whenever Ethan came to visit his maternal grandmother, Elizabeth, who lived in a simpler, but still comfortable, house than his parents' mansion. The two would meet at the park. Heir discovered that he knew things she had never heard of, distant places he had traveled, like Paris and London, and exotic foods he ate in expensive restaurants in downtown Viridia. Ethan discovered that Heir knew how to play games he had never tried in his life: hopscotch, tag, hide and seek. And she laughed in such a pure and genuine way that it made him want to laugh too. Something that didn't happen often in the busy, commitment-filled routine of his own home. My grandpa says that when I grow up, I'm going to work in my granddad's company. I'm going to own everything, Ethan said one afternoon as they sat on the park swing set, swinging slowly. And what are you going to do when you grow up? He asked, genuinely curious about the dreams of the girl who had become his favorite friend. Heir thought for a few seconds, swinging her feet that still didn't reach the ground from the swing. I want to be a teacher, to teach kids like us. My mom says it's a beautiful profession, that you help people learn new things, she replied, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. You could work at my company when we're older. That way, we'd work together forever, Ethan suggested, not quite understanding why that idea made him so happy. Eilara's heart skipped a different kind of beat in that moment, a strange and wonderful feeling that she was too young to understand, but she held it in her chest like a treasure. Months passed, and the two forged a pure and true friendship, free from the complications of the adult world. Heir eagerly awaited Thursday and Sunday afternoons, knowing Ethan would appear at the park. She even dreamed of him during the week, inventing new games to teach him when they met, and her chest always tightened when he had to leave at the end of the afternoon. Ethan also began to feel something different. He, who had all the expensive toys, all the video game consoles, felt truly happy only when he was with that girl with dark curls, who made him forget everything and simply be a child. Heir, I have to go, Ethan told her one December afternoon, his eyes filled with tears he tried to hide, because men in the Blackwood family weren't supposed to cry. My grandmother found a spot for me at a boarding school in Switzerland. She says I'll learn to be a real businessman there, that I'll prepare to run the company, he explained, trying to sound mature, like the adult spoke to him. But his voice cracked. Heir felt her world collapsing around her. At 8 years old, she already knew she loved Ethan, in a different way than she loved her other friends from school or the street. But you'll come back, right? She asked, her voice trembling as she held back tears. Of course I'll come back, and when I do, you'll be here waiting for me. Right? Ethan asked, taking her small hand in his. Always, I'll wait for you always, she replied. And in that moment, she made a silent promise in her heart that she would carry for the rest of her life, not yet knowing how much those words would mean in the future. The farewell took place on a warm January morning in 2011 at Viridia Airport. Heir wasn't there, of course. Her family didn't even have a car for such a long and expensive trip to the airport. But Ethan took with him a colorful beaded bracelet she had made for him, with much care using the colors of the English flag, and a photo of the two of them that Betty had taken at the park on a particularly happy afternoon. Heir kept the blue metal toy car he had given her on their last day in her dresser drawer, along with the promise etched in her heart that one day he would return to seek the friendship they had built. And so began a separation that lasted 15 long years, but could never erase the first love of two children who didn't yet know they were destined to meet again and discover that some feelings are too strong for time to destroy. Do you think Heir and Ethan will ever find each other again? Share your predictions in the comments below. A fated reunion. 15 years later, in March 2023, Heir Miller walked along Grand Avenue in Viridia, carrying a paper bag from the Book Nook filled with textbooks she had just bought to prepare for the following week's lessons. At 23 years old, she had become exactly what she dreamed of as a child, an early childhood teacher at Ramsey Primary, a public school in the Parkside neighborhood where she earned $2,400 a month and adored every day of working with her 4- and 5-year-old students. Her dark curls now reached her waist, always pulled back in a messy bun during classes, and those large hazel eyes remained her trademark, shining every time she spoke of her little pupils. She lived in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment on Elm Street in the Oakwood neighborhood, which she shared with her best friend, Chloe, a nurse at Central Hospital. They each paid £600 in rent and split expenses with the organization of someone who had learned to live without luxuries, but with dignity. That sunny Thursday afternoon, she was returning from her postgraduate course in psychopedagogy at Viridia University, where she paid £450 a month with an academic scholarship she had earned. She decided to pop into the Old Mill Cafe in the Abbey Gardens for a flat white and to grade some art activities the children had done during the week. It was a place she had frequented for 2 years, ever since she discovered they made a special latte that cost only $4 and came with a little cream pastry that always reminded her of her childhood at her grandmother's house. As she looked for a table at the back of the cafe, always preferring the quieter corners to concentrate on her work, Ilara heard a familiar male voice ordering a black coffee at the counter. Something in that deep, velvety voice made her stop in her tracks and look over her shoulder. And when her eyes met the back of the man, dressed in an impeccable navy blue suit that clearly cost more than her monthly salary, her heart raced in a way it hadn't in years. Her hands began to tremble, her breathing became erratic, and for a moment she thought she would faint right there, in the middle of the cafe. "Ethan," she whispered softly. But he didn't hear her over the noise of the espresso machine and the conversations of the other customers. The man slowly turned to find a table, and when his deep blue eyes met her hazel ones, time simply stopped. 15 years dissolved in a single second, and there they were again, 2 children in a park, looking at each other as if the whole world was made just for them. The same connection, the same chemistry, the same feeling that they were finally complete. Ethan Blackwood, at 24 years old, had become exactly what destiny and family had planned for him, but in an even more impressive way than anyone expected. Graduating summa cum laude in business administration from Harvard University, with an MBA in business management from the London School of Economics, and a specialization in international markets from Wharton School, he had taken over the vice presidency of Blackwood Constructions 2 years prior, when he returned permanently to England after more than a decade studying at the best schools and universities in the world. His grandfather's company was now worth over £50 million, with contracts spread across the country and international projects in Latin America, and he earned £40,000 a month, in addition to profit sharing that easily reached £400,000 a year. Physically, he had become a man who commanded attention wherever he went. Tall at 6'1", broad shoulders, that his Italian suit from the Hermenegildo Segna brand perfectly molded. Dark hair always impeccably styled at Viridia's most expensive salon. And those intense blue eyes that now held a depth and intensity that didn't exist when he was a child. He lived in a 3,000-square-foot penthouse in Greenwich that had cost £2 million and was decorated by one of the country's most famous architects. He drove a Mercedes-Benz S-Class valued at £250,000 and frequented restaurants where a single meal cost what Ilara earned in a week. "I can't believe it's you," Ethan said, putting his cup on the counter, not caring that coffee was spilling, and walking towards her with long, determined strides. Ilara got up from the chair where she had just sat, still in shock, And before she could say anything or fully process what was happening, he enveloped her in a tight hug that lasted much longer than would be appropriate between two friends reuniting after 15 years. "Elara, my God, you're so beautiful," he said, his voice emotional in a way that completely surprised her. "You've become an incredible woman, exactly as I imagined you would be." "You've changed a lot too," she replied, trying to hide how nervous she was and how loudly her heart was beating. Sure, he could hear it. "When did you come back to England?" he asked, still processing his presence there, in the same simple cafe she frequented, as if the universe had conspired for that encounter. "I came back permanently 2 years ago. I took over the family businesses, you know how it is. And you? Did you achieve your dream of being a teacher?" Ethan asked, guiding her to a table in the corner, away from the other customers, as if he wanted privacy to talk to her. "Yes, I work at a public school nearby. I love what I do. Every day is a new discovery with the children," Elara replied, adjusting her bag on the chair and trying to appear calmer than she really was. "Of course you do. You were always special like that. You always knew exactly what you wanted from life," he said, and the affectionate way he spoke made her heart race even more. They sat down, and the next 2 hours passed like 15 minutes of pure magic. Ethan talked about his years in Switzerland, where he studied at a rigorous boarding school that prepared him for the business world. Then about England and the United States, always studying and preparing to run the family company, but also about how he felt a constant loneliness, as if he was always searching for something he couldn't find. "You know, Elara, I've traveled all over the world. I've seen incredible places, met important people. I've learned several languages, but I always felt like something was missing," he said, playing with the third cup of coffee he had ordered, just to have an excuse to stay longer with her. "How so?" she asked, genuinely curious, and trying not to show how much his every word affected her. "I never found anyone who made me laugh like you did when we were kids. I never had conversations that truly mattered, that made me feel like myself, not the company heir or the Blackwood son," Ethan explained, looking directly into her eyes in a way that made her feel as if she were the only person in the world. Elara told him about her teaching degree at the University of Viridia, which she had managed to pay for by working 3 different jobs. And with a scholarship she won for having the best grades in high school, about the children she taught, and how each one had a unique personality that charmed her every day, about how she had managed to achieve her dream of being a teacher despite coming from a simple family. "I have a little girl in my class, Sophia, who reminds me of you when you were little," she said, smiling affectionately as she spoke of her student. "Why?" Ethan asked, curious and touched by the comparison. "She asks questions that have no answers, you know? Like, why doesn't the sky fall on our heads? Or why do adults get sad when they should be happy? And she has blue eyes that sparkle with curiosity, just like yours did when you were a child," Elara recounted, and Ethan laughed in that genuine, pleasant way she remembered perfectly from childhood. "You were always special to me too," she said, when he commented on how good it felt to talk to her again. But she didn't have the courage to tell him the whole truth about the love she had been harboring for 15 years, about how she had never been able to fall in love with any other man, because they were all compared to the memory of him. "Elara, I know it might be strange after so long, but would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow? There's a restaurant in Highfield I'd love to take you to. Or, if you prefer, we can go somewhere simpler where you'd feel comfortable," Ethan asked, leaning forward across the table and showing a vulnerability she didn't expect to see in him. "I don't know if that's a good idea, Ethan. We live in very different worlds now," she replied, hesitating and afraid of getting hurt. "Please, Elara, just one dinner, like 2 childhood friends who've reconnected. I promise I'll pick you up at your place and take you back safe and sound. And I also promise it won't be awkward or uncomfortable," he insisted. And there was something in his eyes she couldn't resist. Elara looked at him, and saw not the millionaire businessman in an expensive suit and a watch that cost more than she earned in a year, but the 8-year-old boy who had promised to return in the park 15 years ago. "Okay, but nothing too fancy, please. I don't have clothes for really posh places," she conceded, already regretting it a little, but unable to say no to him. "Whatever you want, Elara. I just want to spend time with you, to get to know the incredible woman you've become," Ethan said, and the smile that appeared on his face was exactly like the smile of the boy she had known and secretly loved. When they said goodbye at the cafe door, with the sun already setting and painting the sky orange, Ethan held her hand a little longer than would be normal between friends who had just reconnected. "See you tomorrow, Elara, and thank you for waiting for me, even if you didn't know I would come back," he told her, gently squeezing her fingers before letting go. "What do you mean I waited?" she asked, confused, but her heart racing from the contact. "I don't know. I always had a certainty that when I came back to England, our paths would cross again, that you would still be here, that we would find each other," he explained, reluctantly letting go of her hand and leaving a warmth that she felt until she got home. She stood on the bustling Grand Avenue pavement, watching him get into a car that cost more than she would earn in 10 years of work, and felt her peaceful and carefully organized life had just been turned upside down in a way that both scared and excited her. The unthinkable proposal, 2 weeks after that first dinner at the Riverview restaurant in Waterbrook, which had transformed into a sequence of almost daily meetings in increasingly simple and cozy places that Elara chose. Ethan arrived at her apartment one Friday night with a different expression on his face. She already knew that look well from childhood. It was the same one he had when he was worried about something important and didn't know how to talk about it. They had planned to watch a movie at home, something that had become routine since she told him she preferred quiet nights to the expensive restaurants he frequented, where she felt out of place and observed by other customers. "You're acting strange today," Elara said, pouring the Albarino white wine he had brought, a 150-pounder bottle, which cost far more than she spent on drinks in an entire month, but which he carefully chose, thinking about what she might like. "Has something happened at the company?" she asked, noticing how he paced the small living room without being able to sit down, nervously touching his gold Rolex watch, which was worth more than her car. He was wearing simple Zara jeans he had bought on sale and a basic white mango blouse. But to Ethan, she looked more beautiful than any elegant woman he had seen at the social events of Viridia's high society he was obligated to attend. Ethan was silent for a few minutes, pacing the small but cozy living room of the apartment Elara had decorated with such care. The walls were adorned with colorful drawings made by her students, which she cherished like treasures, family photographs in simple frames bought at the local market, and a few books stacked on a pine wood bookshelf she had bought at a second-hand furniture store in Old Town Viridia for $40. The contrast between that simple but loving environment and his modern, cold penthouse in Greenwich with designer furniture and priceless works of art was evident and made him question many things about his own life. "Elara, I need to talk to you about something very serious," he finally said, stopping in front of the small window overlooking the bustling street, observing ordinary people going about their normal lives. "It's about the company, about my family, about my future, and maybe about our future too." The grave, emotion-laden tone of his voice made her immediately turn off the old 32-inch television and sit on the edge of the simple sofa, giving him her full attention. Do you remember I always said that one day I would inherit everything from my grandfather?" Ethan asked, turning to look directly at her with blue eyes filled with an anguish she had never seen before. "I remember, yes. You said you were going to own the most important company in England," she replied, trying to lighten the heavy, tense atmosphere that had settled in the living room. "And isn't that what's happening? Aren't you vice president of Blackwood Constructions?" Elara asked, genuinely confused about where the conversation was heading, but already feeling a bad sensation in her stomach. "I am vice president, but it's not that simple," Ethan replied, running his hands through his hair in a nervous gesture she remembered perfectly from childhood. "My grandfather, Richard, is 82 years old, and last week the doctors at Central Hospital gave him the final diagnosis. He has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he has at most a year to live." Ilara immediately got up from the sofa and went to him, placing her small hand on his strong arm in an instinctive and natural gesture of comfort that she always made when someone she loved was suffering. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I know how much you love your grandfather, how much he means to you," she said, with all the sincerity in the world, remembering how he spoke of his grandfather with admiration when they were children. "The problem isn't just the illness, Ilara. It's the inheritance issue, which is much more complicated than I imagined," he continued, covering her hand with his large, warm one, feeling the comfort that only she could give. "According to the will he made 5 years ago, I can only officially assume the presidency of the company and inherit all the assets if I have a legitimate heir, a child who guarantees the continuation of the Blackwood lineage and the family business. But that's easy to solve," she said without thinking, still not quite understanding where he was going with the whole conversation. "You're young, handsome, rich, intelligent. Any woman would be delighted to marry you and have children." The expression on his face became even more serious and troubled when she said that, and he moved a few steps away from her, as if those words had hurt him in some way. "It's not that simple, Ilara," Ethan replied, his voice lower and filled with a pain she didn't understand. "Why isn't it simple?" Ilara asked, beginning to genuinely worry about the direction the conversation was taking. Ethan walked to the table where the wine was, poured himself a generous amount, and drank it in one go, as if he needed liquid courage to continue talking about the subject. "Last week, along with my grandfather's tests, I had some complete medical tests done that I had been postponing for months due to work," he said, avoiding her gaze and focusing on the empty glass. "The results showed that I have a condition called severe azoospermia. It's a condition where—" He stopped, took a deep breath, and forced the words out. "Where I can't have children naturally, the probabilities are less than 1%. "Where you can't have children," Ilara completed, feeling her heart tighten in a strange way, a mix of sadness for him and something she couldn't quite identify. Because her friend Chloe was a nurse and always explained various medical conditions during their evening conversations, she had already heard of this type of problem, but she never imagined it could affect someone so close to her. "Exactly. The best fertility specialists in Viridia confirmed the diagnosis," Ethan said, approaching her again, but now maintaining a physical and emotional distance that hadn't existed before. "Ilara, if I don't have an heir by the end of next year, when my grandfather dies, my cousin, Brandon, will automatically take over the company. Everything my grandfather built for 60 years, everything my father worked to maintain and expand, will fall into the hands of someone who only wants to sell everything and split the money among the cousins." "But there are modern treatments, aren't there? In vitro fertilization, artificial insemination, all those technologies," she asked, still trying to process all the heavy information he was unloading on her. "There are treatments, but the doctors at the Vita Clinic, the best in England, said that in my specific case, due to the severity of the condition, the chances of success are very low, less than a chance of it working," he explained, taking a deep breath and preparing for the most difficult part of the conversation. "That's why I've thought of a different alternative, a solution that could work," Ethan said, looking directly into her hazel eyes, with an intensity that made her understand that something very important was coming. The silence that settled in the living room was so heavy and full of tension that Ilara could perfectly hear the cars passing on the street below, the voices of neighbors talking on the building's staircase, even the annoying ticking of the wall clock that had been a gift from her mother when she moved into the apartment. "What kind of alternative?" she asked, her voice coming out lower than normal, already imagining that she wouldn't like the answer he was about to give her. "Artificial insemination with genetic material from an anonymous donor who has physical characteristics similar to mine." Ethan spoke quickly, as if he wanted to get those words out as fast as possible before losing his courage. "The child would be legally registered as my son, would be my legitimate heir before the law, and I would be able to keep the company in the family and honor my grandfather's legacy," he explained, carefully avoiding her gaze. "And the mother of that child? Who would the mother be?" Elara asked, though a part of her already knew exactly what answer he was going to give her. Ethan looked at her with an intensity and vulnerability that made her understand everything before he even said a single word. "I was thinking of you." The words came out as a whisper laden with emotion, but they sounded like a scream in the absolute silence of the living room. "Elara, I trust you more than anyone else in the whole world. You are the only person I know who would do this for the right reasons, without financial interest, without wanting to take advantage of the situation or blackmail me later," he continued, desperate to explain all the reasoning he had done. "Ethan," she began, but he raised his hand, asking her to let him finish, saying everything he had rehearsed. "I know it's a lot to ask. I know it's a crazy thing, that it will change your life completely for the next 9 months. But I've thought about offering more than fair compensation for your time, for the sacrifices you'll have to make, for your generosity in helping me," he said, walking to the table where he had left an expensive black leather briefcase she hadn't noticed when he arrived. £400,000, paid in monthly installments during the pregnancy, plus a 2-bedroom apartment in Oakwood in your name when the child is born. Elara felt her legs go weak and had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. £400,000 was more money than she would earn in 15 years working as a teacher at the public school. It was enough money to buy her own apartment in a good area, help her parents who still lived in the simple little house in the old town and were getting older, do a specialization abroad if she wanted, and have financial security for the rest of her life. "Ethan, that's a lot of money," she said, trying to process an amount she never imagined she would see in her life. "It's not that much for me. If I lose the company, I'll lose much more than that. And besides, you deserve much more than that for what you would be doing for me," he replied pragmatically. "It's not about the money," she said, trying to organize her thoughts, which were in a complete whirlwind. "It's that you're asking me to carry your child, to spend 9 months of my life creating a child inside me, and then have to give him to you, and pretend nothing happened," Elara explained, feeling a strange pain in her chest that she couldn't quite explain. "It wouldn't be exactly like that. It wouldn't just be giving and forgetting." Ethan approached her again, carefully. "You wouldn't disappear from the child's life. You could visit him whenever you wanted. You could be part of his life, be an important presence. You would be like a very special and beloved aunt." "An aunt," she repeated, feeling the pain in her chest increase and become almost unbearable. There he was, the man she had loved in silence since childhood, the man for whom she had never been able to fall in love with anyone else, asking her to carry his child, but not out of love, not because he wanted to start a family with her, but out of necessity, for business, for convenience. "Ethan, have you ever thought that maybe it would be better if you tried to find someone you truly love? Someone who wants to marry you and start a real family?" she asked, knowing she was being masochistic to suggest that, but needing to hear the answer. "Elara, I don't have time to find someone, fall in love, date, get engaged, get married. My grandfather has at most a year to live," he explained, running his hand through his hair in that nervous gesture. "And besides, I don't want to marry out of obligation, out of necessity, I don't want to bring a woman into my life just because I need an heir. It would be unfair to her and to me." Ethan replied. "But wouldn't it be unfair to me?" Elara asked, her voice breaking with emotion. "With you, it's different. Completely different. We've known each other forever, since we were children. You know who I really am, not just the rich businessman. And I trust that you would take good care of the child, that you would love him even if you knew he wouldn't stay with you forever." Elara closed her eyes and tried to imagine what it would be like. 9 months carrying the child of the man she loved, feeling him grow inside her, talking to him every night, creating a connection that would break at birth. "I need to think about it calmly," she finally said. "It's a very important decision, one that will affect the rest of my life in ways I can't even imagine." "Of course you need to think about it. Take all the time you need." Ethan approached her and took her small hands in his. "But Elara, you would be the most important person in my life if you agreed to do this. I will be eternally grateful to you, and I will ensure that you never regret this decision." That night, after Ethan left, and she was alone in the silent apartment, Elara stayed awake until the sun came up. She thought about the boy she had met in the park 15 years ago, about the incredible man he had become, about the love she had carried in silence for so long that it was already a part of her. And she thought that perhaps this was the only opportunity she would have to truly be a part of his life, to have a piece of him forever, even if no one else knew. What would you do in Elara's situation? Would you accept Ethan's proposal? Tell us why in the comments. The contract and the mansion. On Monday morning, with trembling hands and a racing heart, she called his mobile. "Ethan, it's me, Elara. I accept your proposal." The following Thursday, after that life-changing call, Elara found herself sitting in the offices of Davies & Cobey Solicitors, located on the 30th floor of an imposing building on Grand Avenue in Viridia, where every square foot was worth more than her entire home, and the reverent silence was only broken by the distant traffic noise far below. "So, Ms. Miller, let's review the main terms of this agreement." Mr. Edward Davies, a distinguished 55-year-old man with impeccably styled gray hair, suits costing £12,000, and an impeccable reputation among Viridia's elite, meticulously explained each clause of the contract Ethan had ordered, prepared with maximum discretion and absolute secrecy. Mr. Davies said with a professional voice, adjusting his Cartier glasses that cost £6,000 and opening a genuine Chow Italian leather folder. "Mr. Ethan Blackwood agrees to pay the total amount of $400,000 divided into monthly installments of $44,500 during the 9 months of gestation. In addition, he will fully cover all medical expenses, including premium health insurance from Medicare, which costs $1,000. Consultations with Viridia's best specialists, routine and emergency tests, imported vitamins, supplements, in short, everything necessary to ensure a healthy pregnancy." Elara tried to pay attention to every word, but the figures were so surreal and astronomical that her simple mind had difficulty processing those amounts. Ethan sat beside her in an Italian leather armchair that probably cost more than all the furniture in her apartment, wearing a charcoal gray suit from the Italian brand Brioni that cost £10,000, and she could smell the expensive, sophisticated perfume he used, Tom Ford Oud Wood, which cost $1,500 a bottle and had a woody, distinctive aroma that made her feel a little dizzy whenever he came close. "Elara, do you have any questions about the clauses so far?" he asked gently and carefully, noticing that she was quieter than usual and seemed a little lost amidst so much formality and complicated legal language. "It's a lot of information at once," she replied honestly, looking at the thick 20-page document full of complex legal terms she could barely understand. Ms. Miller will also receive a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment in the upscale Oakwood neighborhood, a valued area of the city, valued at £300,000, which will be definitively transferred to her civil name on the day of the child's birth, with all necessary legal documentation. Mr. Davies continued, turning the pages of the contract with precise movements. Throughout the gestational period, which we estimate at 9 months, Ms. Miller will move to Mr. Blackwood's main residence in Greenwich, where she will have a fully furnished master bedroom with a private bathroom, a private lounge, plus unrestricted access to a specialized housekeeper, a 24-hour private driver, a renowned nutritionist, a personal trainer specialized in pregnant women, and an on-call obstetric nurse for any emergency. The idea of living in Ethan's luxurious house for 9 entire months still made Alara nervous and anxious, but she had already mentally accepted all the changes that would mean for her life. There are also some important restrictions during the gestational period that need to be clarified and signed, Mr. Davies read in a firm, professional voice, as if he were accustomed to dealing with such contracts. No alcoholic beverages of any strength, cigarettes or any type of tobacco, high-risk physical activities such as running or heavy weightlifting, travel outside the county without prior medical authorization, medications without a prescription from the responsible obstetrician. Each restriction sounded like golden handcuffs, but Alara understood the necessity. And it is essential to clarify that the child will be registered as Mr. Blackwood's legitimate son from birth, and Ms. Miller will be listed as the biological mother in the documents, but will formally renounce legal custody and all parental rights, transferring them entirely to the father. That clause hit Alara like a violent punch to the stomach, although she already knew that was exactly how it would work. Hearing it aloud and officially made everything more real, more painful, more definitive. "Can I have a few minutes alone to process all this?" Alara asked, her voice coming out weaker than normal, feeling suffocated in that luxurious room full of cold formality, with complicated dealings and decisions that would change her life forever. "Naturally, Ms. Miller. I'll get you a special Colombian coffee," Mr. Davies said, with refined politeness, discreetly leaving the room and leaving the two of them alone for the first time since they arrived. As soon as the heavy door closed, Ethan immediately got up from the armchair and approached her, taking her small hands with extreme care, as if she were made of the most fragile glass in the world. "Alara, I know all this seems very formal, very cold, very commercial, but it's just to protect us legally, to ensure there are no problems or future misunderstandings," he said, his voice much softer, more affectionate, and more human than before, when he was in the presence of the lawyer. "You know that between us, it won't be like that, right? You know that you mean a lot to me, that you're not just a business deal or an employee to me." "I know you care," she replied, but a confused part of her still wondered if he really cared about her as a person, or just because he needed her to solve his urgent problem. "It's just that all this is so different from my simple, organized life. I never imagined I would live in a rich man's mansion, have a private driver, all those luxurious things that are normal for you, but completely surreal for me. You'll get used to it faster than you imagine, I promise. And remember, it's not forever. It's only 9 months of your life," Ethan said, squeezing her hands comfortingly and affectionately. "After that, you'll have your complete financial independence, your own paid apartment, and you can do absolutely anything you want in life. You can travel the world, study abroad, set up your own school, any dream you've held." The way he spoke made it sound as if he was planning to get rid of her after he got what he wanted, and that hurt more than she was prepared to feel. "And you? What are you going to do after you have your heir?" she asked him, trying not to show how much that question tormented her. "I'm going to take care of the child, run the company, honor the family legacy," he replied. but there was something in his tone of voice that didn't sound entirely convincing. "When, doctor?" Mr. Davies returned with the Colombian coffee that cost £40 a kilo. Ilara signed the contract with visibly trembling hands. Each signature of hers seemed like a piece of her old simple life leaving forever, being replaced by a completely new and terrifying reality. "Congratulations to both of you. Now we'll deal with the necessary medical procedures," the lawyer said, with a professional smile, putting the important documents into an armored folder. Dr. Alistair Reed, a renowned specialist in assisted reproduction at the Vita Clinic, is already waiting for you next Thursday at 10 a.m. for the first consultation and process planning. Leaving the office inside Ethan's Mercedes-Benz S-Class, which cost £250,000 and had a genuine beige leather interior, they remained silent for long minutes, while Mike, the 60-year-old driver who had worked for the family for 15 years and earned £3,200 a month, drove calmly through the heavy and chaotic traffic of Grand Avenue. "Do you regret it?" Ethan finally asked, noticing her thoughtful and melancholic expression as she looked out the tinted window. "I don't know yet. Everything's happening so fast. So many changes at once," she replied honestly, watching the expensive and important buildings pass by the window as if they were movie sets. "Ilara, I want you to know one important thing. Even though we've signed the contract, you can change your mind at any time if you don't feel good about the situation," he said, completely surprising her with that statement. "Really? Even though everything is signed?" "Completely serious. I don't want you to do this if you're not 100% sure and comfortable. It would be unfair to me, to you, and especially to the child," Ethan explained. And for the first time since he made the crazy proposal, she saw a genuine crack of vulnerability and humanity in him. A new life begins. A week later, at the Vita Clinic located in the upscale Highfield neighborhood, one of the most prestigious assisted reproduction clinics in Europe, Dr. Alistair Reed explained the entire artificial insemination process with the patience and professionalism of someone who had done it thousands of times over a 20-year career. The clinic cost £12,000 per attempt, and Ethan paid for 3 full attempts up front in case the first one didn't yield the expected result. The procedure itself was simpler and less invasive than Ilara imagined, performed in a clean, aseptic room with state-of-the-art equipment imported from Germany. 2 weeks after the procedure, on a sunny Tuesday morning that started like any other, Ilara woke up feeling a different and strange nausea unlike anything she had felt in her life. She ran to the bathroom and vomited all the red fruit smoothie she had for breakfast. "Could it be?" she whispered to herself, looking in the mirror and touching her still flat belly. The next day, she took a pregnancy test at Lab Diagnostics in the elegant Oakwood neighborhood, accompanied by Ethan, who had canceled 2 important multi-million-pound meetings to be present at that crucial moment. When Dr. Reed called them into the private room and said, "Congratulations, the HCG beta test is positive. You're pregnant." With a smile on his face, Ethan looked at the test paper for long seconds, as if he couldn't process the information, and then looked at Ilara, with his blue eyes shining intensely in a way she had never seen before. "We did it," he whispered. And for a magical moment, she almost forgot that this was a commercial agreement. The genuine and emotional joy on his face was contagious, and she found herself smiling too, despite all the complications and uncertainties that pregnancy represented for the future. The following Saturday, Ilara officially moved into Blackwood Manor on the elegant Greenwich Avenue. The house was even more impressive and luxurious than she remembered from childhood. 4 imposing stories, enormous and perfectly manicured gardens that looked straight out of a magazine, a blue swimming pool that resembled a 5-star resort, and staff who moved silently to keep everything absolutely perfect. Her room was on the 2nd floor, decorated with classic furniture in soft shades of beige and gold, a king-size bed that was larger than her entire old apartment's living room, and a breathtaking view of the garden that took her breath away. Every morning, "Sarah will take care of all your meals, always keeping pregnancy nutrition in mind," Ethan explained, introducing her to the cook, a friendly 50-year-old woman who had worked for the family for 2 decades and earned £2,800 a month. "Anything you want to eat, any strange craving, just ask her." "Thank you, Sarah," Alara said, trying to be polite, despite feeling completely out of place in that luxurious environment. "Oh, honey, it will be a pleasure to take care of you and the baby," the woman replied with a genuine, maternal smile that reassured her a little. On the first night sleeping in the mansion, Alara dined alone in the formal dining room that seated 12, eating grilled salmon with asparagus that Sarah had specially prepared, thinking about the necessary vitamins for pregnancy. Ethan was at an important business meeting that had run very late. The solitude in that gigantic, silent house was deafening and heavy, very different from her small apartment, but full of life and laughter with Chloe. When Ethan finally arrived home, around 11 at night, he found her on the room's terrace, looking at the stars and the full moon in Viridia's clear sky. "How was your first day here?" he asked carefully, approaching her on the spacious terrace. "Strange. Everything is very beautiful, very perfect, very luxurious, but—" She stopped, searching for the right words, not to sound ungrateful. "But it doesn't feel real," he completed, showing that he understood exactly what she was feeling. "Exactly. It feels like I'm living someone else's life, like I'm an actress." Expensive movie. "You'll get used to it in time, and I'll try to be more present. I promise. I'm just sorting out some urgent company matters so I can dedicate myself more to the pregnancy," Ethan said, and there was a sincerity in his voice that made her believe he truly cared about her well-being and the baby that was growing. The first weeks of pregnancy were more challenging than Alara imagined they would be. Morning sickness was constant and intense, sometimes lasting all day, and she lost 6 pounds because she couldn't keep anything solid in her stomach for more than a few hours. Dr. Alan Thompson, the renowned obstetrician Ethan hired, who charged $100,000 per private consultation, said it was completely normal, but prescribed some imported medicines and special supplements to alleviate the most bothersome symptoms. What surprised her most was discovering how attentive and caring Ethan was, far beyond what she expected from someone who was simply fulfilling a commercial contract. Every morning, before leaving for work at the company, he would gently knock on her bedroom door to ask how she had slept and how she was feeling. "Did you sleep well? Is the nausea better today?" he always asked, with the same genuine concern in his voice, and when she said yes, he would smile in a way that lit up his entire face. When she mentioned one morning that she really missed eating warm butter rolls from the bakery near her old apartment in Oakwood, he sent Mike to fetch 10 fresh rolls every day at 6 a.m. When she commented that she missed talking to the children at school, he suggested she work only half days so she wouldn't get too tired and would have more time to rest. "You don't need to do all these things for me," Alara said one warm Thursday afternoon when he arrived home, carrying a basket of organic fruits that cost £150 and which she had casually commented looked delicious in a magazine ad. "Do what?" Ethan asked, looking genuinely confused, as if those affectionate gestures were the most natural thing in the world. "Taking care of me as if I were special to you, as if you really cared," she explained, feeling vulnerable and exposed. Speaking about it so directly. "But you are special to me, Alara," he replied without hesitating for a second. "You always were special since we were children in the park." The first glimpse, in the 12th week of pregnancy, they had their first ultrasound at Dr. Thompson's private practice located at Viridia General Hospital, one of the most expensive and prestigious in the city. Ilara was lying on the padded examination table with her belly exposed, and the clear, cold gel spread over her skin, which was already starting to become slightly rounded, while Ethan held her hand and looked fascinated at the screen of the ultra-modern machine. "There's your baby," Dr. Thompson said with a professional smile, pointing to a small, moving figure on the black and white screen. "You can see the little head here, the little arms forming here, and the little legs here." Ethan was completely silent for long seconds, staring at the screen as if he were witnessing the greatest miracle of the universe. Ilara saw genuine tears forming in his blue eyes and felt her own heartache in a way that was both painful and good. "He's so tiny, but he's already so formed," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything is correct and perfect. Heart beating normally and strongly, appropriate size for gestational age, development within expectations," Dr. Thompson explained, printing several ultrasound photos. "Do you want to know the sex? We can't be absolutely certain yet, but from the position and what I can see, it looks like it might be a boy. A boy. A boy," Ethan repeated slowly, as if testing how that word sounded coming from his mouth. He squeezed Ilara's hand, unable to take his eyes off the ultrasound screen. "Ilara, are you seeing this? It's our son growing in there." The natural and affectionate way he said "our" made her forget for a few moments that this was temporary, that it was just a contract. For a few magical seconds, she allowed herself to imagine that they were a normal, loving couple, expecting their first child, planning their future together as a real family. From that special day on, Ethan began to show an interest in the pregnancy that went far beyond what Ilara expected from someone who was simply fulfilling a cold commercial agreement. He bought every book on pregnancy and child development he could find at the Book Nook in Westwood Mall, spending over $800 on specialized national and imported literature. "Did you know that in the 16th week, the baby can already hear our voice and can recognize familiar sounds?" he asked one night during dinner, after spending the entire afternoon reading a thick book on fetal development. "I didn't know that," she replied, finding his growing enthusiasm both strange and extremely endearing. "Maybe we should talk to him every day. The books say it's very important for the child's neurological and emotional development," Ethan suggested, seeming genuinely interested and excited by the idea. "You want to talk to the baby?" Ilara asked, surprised but touched by the affectionate suggestion. "If you let me, if it doesn't seem strange to you." The sincere vulnerability in his voice completely disarmed her. "Of course I'll let you. I think it would be beautiful." That night, for the first time since she moved into his house, Ethan entered her bedroom. Ilara was lying comfortably in the gigantic bed, reading a children's storybook she had bought to start reading to the baby when he gently knocked on the door. "May I come in?" he asked politely. "You can," she said, closing the book and settling better in bed, suddenly nervous with his presence in her intimate space. Ethan approached hesitantly, as if he were invading a sacred and private space. "How do you do this? How do you talk to a baby that's still in its mother's belly?" he asked, sitting carefully on the edge of the king-size bed. "I don't know. I think we just talk normally, as if he can understand everything," Ilara replied, also not being absolutely sure how it worked. "You can put your hand on my belly if you want," she offered, surprising herself with the naturalness of the intimate offer. Ethan looked at her, silently asking for permission once more, and when she nodded and smiled encouragingly, he carefully placed his large, warm hand over her belly, which was already starting to become rounded and firm. "Hello, baby," he said softly and affectionately. "I'm your dad. I know it's still too early for you to understand me, but I wanted you to know that I already love you very much. So much." Ilara felt her eyes fill with tears, seeing the genuine tenderness on his face, hearing the real emotion in his voice. "Your mom is the most special and incredible person in the whole world," Ethan continued, looking affectionately at Alara as he spoke to the baby. She is brave, intelligent, generous, and has the most beautiful and pure heart I have ever known in my entire life. You are very lucky that she is taking care of you with so much love. The emotional and sincere way he spoke made Alara's heart race in a way it hadn't in a long time. There was something in his voice that went far beyond gratitude or simple childhood friendship. "Ethan," she began, but she didn't know exactly what she wanted to say. "Forgive me if this is strange or inappropriate," he said, gently removing his hand from her belly. "It's not strange. It's very beautiful and moving," she admitted sincerely. "You're going to be an incredible, loving father." "You think so?" "I'm sure. Do you remember when we were kids, and you always said you wanted to take care of everyone? You always had that natural protective instinct." That night, after Ethan left her room, Alara stayed awake for a long time, thinking about the subtle but significant change that was happening between them. It was no longer just the formal fulfillment of a commercial contract. Something was growing there, something that went far beyond the child she was carrying, and that scared her more than any nausea or physical change the pregnancy might bring to her life. A confession and a promise. In the following weeks, the nightly conversations with the baby became a sacred and special routine. Ethan would appear in her room every night after dinner, always around 9, and the two would talk affectionately to the belly that grew every day. He talked about his work at the company, about the ambitious plans he had for the company's future, about the beautiful places in the world he wanted to show his son when he grew up. Alara talked about her beloved students at school, about the children's books she was reading, about how anxious and excited she was to meet the baby in person. "Have you thought about names yet?" Ethan asked one special night when she was 18 weeks pregnant, and her belly was already impossible to hide or disguise. "Some pretty names. And you? For a boy, I always liked the name Gabriel, and for a girl, Sophia. Gabriel is beautiful and has a nice meaning. I have a student named Sophia, who I told you reminds me of you when you were little," Alara commented affectionately. "Then she must be very special and intelligent." "She is very special." "Gabrielle and Sophia," he repeated thoughtfully. "Gabrielle Blackwood or Sophia Blackwood." The natural way he said the family surname made Alara realize a painful reality. Indeed, there was a child growing inside her who was going to bear his name, who was going to be officially his son before the law and society, while she would be left only with the memories of the 9 most intense and contradictory months of her entire life. In the 20th week of gestation, during the detailed morphological ultrasound, they officially discovered that it was indeed a healthy and perfect boy. "Gabriel," Ethan said immediately, as soon as Dr. Thompson confirmed the sex with absolute certainty. And Alara saw pure emotion taking over his face in a way that made her fall even more deeply in love. Gabriel Blackwood. That night, he came home carrying a special gift, a baby blue teddy bear that cost £250 at an imported goods store and had the name Gabriel affectionately embroidered on its chest. "For our son," he said, carefully placing the bear on her lap. "Our," she repeated softly, knowing it was dangerous and painful to get used to that possessive word, but completely unable to resist the good, warm feeling it brought to her loving heart. And in that intimate moment, with Ethan sitting beside her on the bed, talking animatedly with Gabriel about football and how he was going to teach him to swim in the big house pool, Alara allowed herself to daydream about an alternative reality where they truly were a united family, where the love she had felt for 15 years was finally truly reciprocated, where Gabriel would grow up with the 2 parents who loved him together, forever, without contracts or commercial agreements between them. Months passed, and with each passing day, the thin line between the professional agreement and something much hyper and more personal became blurrier and more confusing. Ethan canceled important meetings to accompany her to medical appointments. He came home earlier to have dinner together and always found an excuse to spend more time talking to her and Gabriel. Ilara began to realize that he looked at her differently, more intensely, more affectionately, as if he was seeing something in her that he hadn't noticed before. And she, who had loved him for 15 years, felt her heart open even more for a man who was being more attentive and loving than any boyfriend she had ever had in her life. In the 26th week of pregnancy, on a rainy Thursday night that started like any other, everything changed between Ilara and Ethan in a way neither of them was prepared to face. She was in her room, lying comfortably in bed, reading a book about child development, when she heard the front door close and his familiar footsteps coming up the stairs. It was almost 10 p.m., later than usual, and she could hear by his heavy breathing that he was tired after a long and stressful day at the company. "Ilara!" he called, gently knocking on her bedroom door as he did every night. "May I come in? I know it's late, but I wanted to talk to Gabriel before bed." "Of course you can," she replied, marking her page in the book and settling more comfortably in bed. When he entered, she immediately noticed something different about him. His suit was wrinkled, his tie undone, his hair disheveled, and in his blue eyes, there was an intensity she had never seen before. "Has something happened at work?" she asked, concerned by the troubled expression on his face. "Nothing important, just some difficult meetings with investors." "And what?" he replied, sitting on the edge of the bed with a heavy sigh. "Ilara, can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone." The intimate and vulnerable tone of his voice made her sit up in bed, paying full attention. "Of course you can. You can tell me anything. Today, during the most important meeting of the day with Japanese investors who could change the company's future, I caught myself thinking about you," he said, looking directly into her eyes. "Thinking about how you were, if you were eating well, if Gabriel was moving a lot. And I realized that this has been happening for weeks. I can no longer concentrate on work because my mind is here with you two." Ilara felt her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with pregnancy. "Ethan," she began, but he raised his hand, asking her to let him continue. "Let me finish, please, because if I don't say this now, I'll never have the courage," he said, running his hands through his hair in a nervous gesture. "Ilara, when I made you that proposal, I thought I was going to be able to keep everything on a professional level, that it was just going to be an agreement between friends, something practical to solve my problem." He stopped, took a deep breath, and looked at her with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. "But I couldn't. Every day that passes, every conversation we have with Gabriel, every time I see you taking care of our son with so much love, I've fallen in love with you." The silence that followed was absolute and charged with electricity. Ilara looked at him, trying to process the words she had dreamed of hearing for 15 years. "Are you serious?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Completely serious. I love you, Ilara, not as the mother of my son, not as a friend who is doing me a huge favor. I love you as a woman, as the person I want by my side for the rest of my life." The words came out laden with such intense emotion that she felt tears forming in her eyes. "Ethan, you can't say that now," she said, trying to protect herself from what she felt. "I'm 6 months pregnant, full of hormones, living in your house depending on your money. Don't you think you might be confusing gratitude with love?" "I'm not confusing anything," he replied, moving closer to her on the bed. "I loved you before you agreed to carry Gabriel. I just didn't realize it until you came back into my life." "What do you mean you didn't realize it?" she asked, her heart beating so fast she was sure he could hear it. Do you remember when I said I always had the feeling of looking for something that only existed in the past? Ethan asked, taking her hands in his. I was talking about you. All these years I was looking for you in all the women I met. But I didn't realize it until you came back into my life, and I remembered what it was like to feel true happiness. That's very convenient, Ethan, she said, trying to protect herself even though she felt her heart melting. You discover you love me exactly when I'm carrying your son. Elara, I know how this sounds, but it's something you're saying to keep me happy until Gabriel is born, she interrupted him, though every fiber of her being wanted to believe him. To ensure I won't cause problems or change my mind. It's not that, Ethan said, getting up from the bed and starting to walk around the room. Do you want proof? Cancel the contract. Marry me. We'll raise Gabriel together as a real family, without agreements or signed papers. The proposal caught her completely by surprise. What? You heard right. I don't care about the money, the apartment, none of that. I only want you and our son. I want to wake up every day by your side. I want to take care of you throughout the pregnancy. I want to be present in every moment of Gabriel's life. Our son, she repeated, testing how those words sounded. Since when is he our son? Until yesterday he was your heir to maintain the company. He was always ours, Elara, from the moment he was conceived, from the first time I put my hand on your belly and felt him move. Ethan then knelt by the bed. Elara, I know I hurt you with this contract story, but it was the only way I found to have you in my life without risking our friendship. I was too cowardly to simply confess that I was in love with you since we reconnected. The tears Elara had been holding back finally streamed down her face. Ethan, she began, but he delicately placed a finger on her lips. Before you answer, I have to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago, he said, his voice becoming even softer. Elara, I never forgot you. All these 15 years, I carried the memory of that curly-haired girl who made me laugh in the park, and when I saw you in that cafe, it was as if a part of me that was asleep woke up again. I never forgot you either, she confessed for the first time, her voice breaking with emotion. I've loved you since I was 8 years old, Ethan. I never managed to fall in love with any other man because they were all compared to you. When you made me that proposal, I accepted not for the money, but because it was the only way I saw to be a part of your life, even if only for 9 months. The confession came out like an avalanche of feelings kept hidden for 15 years. You love me? He asked, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Always. Since that day in the park, when you said we could work together forever. I love you so much it hurts, Ethan, she said, touching his face with her hand. I agreed to be just an aunt to Gabriel because I preferred to have a little piece of you than nothing. Ethan looked at her for a moment that seemed like an eternity, and then he leaned in and kissed her softly and affectionately, as if she were made of glass. It was their first kiss, after 15 years of waiting, and it tasted of happy tears and fulfilled dreams. When they separated, he rested his forehead on hers. So, cancel the contract with me. Let's do this the right way. You, me, and Gabriel, as a real family. What if it doesn't work? What if you get tired of me after the novelty wears off? She asked, voicing the fears she had carried for so long. That won't happen. How can you be sure? Because I've loved you for 15 years, Elara. It just took me a while to understand it. And because when I see you taking care of Gabriel, when I see you singing to him and talking to him, I see my whole future. That night, after hours of talking about hidden feelings, old fears, and shared dreams, something definitively changed between them. Elara lay on the big bed, and for the first time since she moved into the house, Ethan didn't leave the room. Can I stay here with you tonight? He asked, with a vulnerability in his voice that moved her. Just to be by your side, to take care of you and Gabriel. Gabriel, I want you to stay, she replied, making room for him in the bed. They lay together, he on top of the covers to respect her space, and they stayed up talking in the dark about everything and nothing. He talked about the nights he spent thinking about her all those years, about how he could never truly fall in love with any other woman. She talked about how she kept the photo of the 2 children in her drawer, about how she used to dream of him marrying other people, and how that hurt her. "Ilara," he called softly, when it was past 2 in the morning. "Can I touch your belly? I want to feel Gabriel." She took his hand and placed it on her rounded belly, and as if he had been waiting for that moment, Gabriel moved a lot. "I think he knows Dad is here," she whispered. "I think he approves of us being together," Ethan said, gently kissing her neck. The kiss on her neck turned into soft caresses on her face, which turned into more intense kisses, which turned into something much deeper and more intimate. "Are you sure?" he asked, when he realized where things were heading. "I'm completely sure. I love you, and I want to give myself to you completely," she replied, pulling him closer to her. They made love that night in a slow, tender, and heartfelt way, respecting her pregnancy, but connecting in a way that went far beyond the physical. It was the union of 2 souls who had searched for each other for 15 years and finally found each other. Every caress was a declaration of love. Every kiss was a promise of the future. Every loving whisper was the confirmation that this was forever. When the sun rose this next morning, they woke up embraced in the big bed, with Gabriel moving softly in her belly, as if he was happy with the new reality. "Good morning, my love," Ethan whispered, kissing her forehead. "Good morning," she replied, still not believing it was real. "Are you still sure you want to cancel the contract?" "More sure than ever. I want to be your husband, not your contractor. I want to be Gabriel's father, not just his legal owner." That morning they called Mr. Davies, requesting an urgent meeting to cancel all the commercial terms of the agreement. "Are you completely sure of this decision?" the lawyer asked, surprised. "Absolutely," Ethan replied, taking Ilara's hand. "We want to get married and form a real family." And so, what began as a cold commercial agreement transformed into the greatest love either of them had ever experienced, proving that sometimes destiny uses the most unexpected paths to unite 2 people who were always meant for each other. The truth unveiled 3 weeks after that night that changed everything between them, when Ilara was 29 weeks pregnant and getting used to the new reality of being Ethan's fiancée, and not just the contracted mother of his child. An unexpected call destroyed all the happiness they had built together. It was a sunny Tuesday morning, and they were having breakfast in the garden of the house, planning the intimate wedding they wanted to have before Gabriel was born, when Ethan's mobile rang, showing the name of Dr. Alistair Reed, the assisted reproduction specialist. "Dr. Reed, has something happened?" Ethan answered, worried because he wasn't expecting any call from the doctor. Ilara continued eating the butter roll he had delivered every morning, watching his expression change drastically during the conversation. "What do you mean, a lab error? What kind of error?" she heard him ask, his voice tensing. "Mr. Blackwood, it would be best if you came to the clinic urgently. There's something very important I need to explain in person." The doctor's voice was loud enough for her to hear. An hour later, they were sitting in Dr. Reed's elegant office at the Vita Clinic, with Ilara holding Ethan's hand and trying to control the anxiety growing in her chest. "Mr. Blackwood, Ms. Ilara, I have to inform you of a serious error we discovered while reviewing old records," the doctor said, with a serious expression that boded no good. The fertility tests Mr. Blackwood had done a few months ago were swapped in the laboratory. The results that indicated severe azoospermia were not yours. The silence in the room was absolute. Ethan looked at the doctor as if he hadn't understood. "What do you mean they weren't mine?" "There was a sample mix-up at the external laboratory we used at that time. Your actual tests, which we found today during an internal audit, show completely normal fertility parameters. Mr. Blackwood, you can have children naturally. You always could," Dr. Reed explained, handing him a folder with the correct analysis. In fact, your values are above average for your age. Ilara felt the world collapse around her. You mean he never needed artificial insemination? She asked, her voice lower than normal. Technically, no. With these parameters, the chances of natural conception are very high, the doctor confirmed. We will obviously sue the laboratory responsible for the error, and we want to formally apologize for the inconvenience caused. But Ilara was barely hearing the apologies. Her mind was racing in 1,000 different directions, all leading to the same devastating conclusion. On the way home, inside the silent Mercedes, they didn't exchange a word. Ethan tried to start a conversation a few times, but she responded only with monosyllables, looking out the window and processing the revelation that changed everything. Ilara, are you okay? He asked. When they arrived at the mansion, I'm perfectly fine, she replied. But the cold, distant tone of her voice said exactly the opposite. I'm going upstairs to rest a bit. Ilara, we have to talk about this, Ethan said, following her to the bedroom. I know the news was a shock, but it doesn't change anything between us. It doesn't change anything? She turned to him, her eyes shining dangerously. Ethan, you can have children naturally. You always could. This changes everything. How does it change everything? We love each other. We're getting married. Gabrielle is coming. None of that has changed. Don't you understand? She said, sitting on the bed and placing her hands on her belly. You don't need me. You never needed me. You can find any woman, fall truly in love, get married, have all the children you want. Tears began to stream down her face. I'm just a mistake, Ethan. A mistake that became convenient when you thought you were in love. You're not a mistake, and I don't think I'm in love. I know I am, he said, approaching her. How can you be sure? How can you know if it's true love or just gratitude because I solved your problem? She asked, pulling away when he tried to touch her. Maybe you just fell in love with the idea of having a ready-made family, with the convenience of not having to look for anyone. Ilara, you're saying crazy things. I've loved you since we were children. You don't love the memory of a child. You fell in love with a convenient situation. That afternoon, while Ethan was in his office trying to resolve legal issues with the laboratory, Ilara received an unexpected visit. Brandon, Ethan's cousin, appeared at the mansion's door accompanied by Victoria, his executive secretary at the company. Ilara, right? I need to talk to you about something very important, Brandon said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ethan isn't here, she replied, trying to close the door. Actually, it's you I want to talk to, about the embarrassing situation you've gotten yourself into, Victoria said. What embarrassing situation? Haven't you heard the news? That Ethan was never sterile? Victoria asked, in a sweet but venomous tone. We just found out today, Ilara replied, forcing herself to maintain composure. Then you know he doesn't need you anymore, Brandon said, entering the house uninvited. He can have children with anyone. In fact, Victoria here has always been in love with him. Now that you've served your purpose, maybe it's time to exit gracefully. What are you implying? Ilara asked. But deep down, she already knew where the conversation was going. We're offering an elegant exit, Victoria said, taking an envelope from her expensive handbag. £4 million for you to disappear from Ethan's life. Have the baby, hand him over as per the original contract, and disappear forever. He'll get over this little infatuation quickly once you're not here reminding him of the mistake that was made. $4 million? Ilara repeated, shocked by the amount. He'll never pay that. You don't need to know that. I have an inheritance I don't use, Brandon explained. Consider it an investment in the family's future. You'll have enough money to live like a queen for the rest of your life, far from here. And Ethan will be free to find someone of his social standing, someone who truly fits with him. You're crazy if you think I'll accept that, Ilara said. But a part of her, the insecure part that always existed, was listening to every word. Think carefully, Ilara, Victoria said, approaching her. Do you really think a man like Ethan will want to stay with a poor little teacher for the rest of his life? He's confused now, but once the novelty wears off, he'll realize you have nothing in common besides a child. Get out of my house, Elara said, but her voice lacked firmness. Our house, Brandon corrected. This is the Blackwood family home. You're just a temporary guest who's deceiving herself into thinking she's become part of the family. He placed the envelope on the table. The money will be available until tomorrow night. After that, the offer expires, and you'll have to find your own way out. After they left, Elara stared at the envelope on the table as if it were a bomb about to explode. £4 million. It was an amount she never imagined seeing in her life, enough to buy a large house, travel the world, give Gabriel a comfortable life if he wanted to visit her sometimes. And more importantly, it would be a way to free Ethan to be happy with someone from his world. Someone who truly deserved to be by such a special man's side. When Ethan arrived home that night, he found her packing her bags in the bedroom. "What are you doing?" he asked, alarmed. "I'm leaving," she replied without looking at him, carefully folding her maternity clothes. "Leaving? We haven't talked about this properly yet. There's nothing to talk about, Ethan. You can have children with anyone. You don't need to stay with me out of obligation." "Obligation? Elara, I love you. This has nothing to do with obligation," he said, taking her clothes and throwing them back into the suitcase. "Do you love me, or do you love the idea of having a ready-made family?" she finally asked, looking at him. "Answer truthfully. If you had known from the beginning that you could have children naturally, would you have fallen in love with me?" The question caught him by surprise, and the 2-second hesitation in his answer was enough to confirm her worst fears. "You hesitated," she said, her voice breaking. "You hesitated because you know that maybe you wouldn't have noticed me if you hadn't needed me." "It wasn't hesitation, it was just, it's a complicated question," Ethan tried to explain. "It's not complicated. Is it yes or no? Would you have fallen in love with a poor teacher if you hadn't needed her to carry your child?" His silence was more eloquent than any answer. "I'm going to stay at Chloe's until Gabriel is born," Elara said, resuming her packing. "Then we'll talk about visits." "Elara, please don't do this. We can resolve this situation. The only thing that needs resolving is me, and I'm resolving myself," she replied, closing the suitcase. "You'll find someone better, Ethan. Someone who truly deserves to be in your life. You deserve to be in my life," he said. But she was already walking down the stairs with her suitcase in hand. "Elara, come back here. We need to talk about this properly." But she didn't come back. She got into the first taxi she found on the street and disappeared into the Viridia night, taking Gabriel with her and leaving Ethan alone in the empty mansion, realizing too late that he had lost the only thing that truly mattered in his life. Do you think Elara is making the right decision by leaving? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Let us know in the comments. A father's plea and a mother's strength. In Chloe's small house, Elara cried until she had no more tears, embracing her best friend who tried to comfort her. "You did the right thing," Chloe said, stroking her hair. "If he truly loves you, he'll come looking for you and prove it. And if he doesn't come, then it wasn't meant to be." But deep down, Elara hoped he would come, that he would prove his love was true and not just the result of convenient circumstances that had brought them together. For the next 2 weeks, Ethan tried to contact Elara every day, but she didn't answer his calls or messages. He sent flowers to Chloe's house, gifts for Gabriel, handwritten letters explaining his feelings, but she returned everything without even opening it. At the company, he couldn't concentrate on anything, canceled important meetings, and spent hours staring out the office window, thinking about how he had let the woman he loved slip away because of an idiotic hesitation. "Son, you have to go get her," Richard said one afternoon, when he went to visit his grandson in the office and found him completely dejected. "Grandpa, aren't you well?" Ethan asked, trying to change the subject. I'm dying, Ethan. But it's not me we're talking about, the old man said, sitting in the expensive office armchair. Do you love that girl? I love her more than my own life. Then stop being a coward and go get her before it's too late. In the 33rd week of gestation, on a rainy Friday morning, Ilara woke up feeling a strange and intense pain in her abdomen. Chloe! She cried, realizing she was bleeding. Her nurse friend ran to the room and, seeing the situation, immediately called 999. It's too early. The baby can't be born now, Ilara said in total panic. It's going to be okay. Let's go to the hospital. Chloe tried to calm her, but she was also worried. At Central Hospital, Director Thompson examined Ilara and gave the diagnosis she most feared hearing. We're going to have to deliver now. The placenta is detaching, and if we wait longer, we could lose both mother and baby. But she's only 33 weeks. Babies at 33 weeks have excellent chances of survival. Gabriel is going to be fine, the doctor reassured. But I need to notify the father. It's essential that he's here. Please call Ethan, Ilara asked Chloe, realizing she needed him at that moment more than anything in her life. Tell him Gabriel is being born. Chloe made the call, and in less than 15 minutes, Ethan arrived at the hospital like a hurricane, still in his pajamas, with disheveled hair and eyes red with desperation. How is she? How is Gabriel? He asked Chloe, who rushed him to the operating room. Ethan? Ilara called when she saw him entering the preparation room dressed in blue surgical scrubs. I'm here, my love. I'm here, he said, taking her hand and kissing her sweaty forehead. Everything's going to be okay. Our son is going to be born strong and healthy. I was so scared. I thought I was going to lose him, she confessed, squeezing his hand. You're not going to lose anything, and you're not going to lose me either. I love you, Ilara. Nothing will change that. At 5:47 a.m. on a rainy Friday, Gabriel Blackwood was born, weighing 5 pounds, 4 ounces, measuring 1.2 inches, with small but perfectly functioning lungs, and a strong cry that echoed through the operating room like celestial music. He's perfect, Dr. Thompson said, showing the baby to the emotional parents. Small, but perfect and healthy. Ethan looked at his son in the doctor's arms and cried as he had never cried in his life. An intense mixture of relief, joy, fear, and a love so overwhelming that it physically hurt in his chest. Hello, Gabriel. I'm your dad, he whispered, delicately touching the baby's tiny hand. And this is your mom, the bravest and most incredible woman in the world. We love you more than anything. Ilara, still drowsy from the anesthesia, smiled, seeing the pure emotion on the face of the man she loved. Gabriel stayed in the neonatal ICU for 2 weeks, in a modern incubator, surrounded by tubes and monitors that controlled every beat of his tiny heart. Ethan and Ilara took turns at the hospital, always by each other's side, talking to Gabriel through the incubator glass, singing to him, reading children's stories. He knows your voices, commented Nurse Helen, one of the specialized nurses. Look how calm he gets when you talk to him. Ilara, I have to tell you something important, Ethan said one afternoon as they watched Gabriel sleeping peacefully in the incubator. About that question you asked me, if I would have fallen in love with you, even if I hadn't needed a mother for Gabriel. She looked at him, preparing her heart for another disappointment. I hesitated that day because the question caught me by surprise, not because I had doubts, he explained. The truth is, I was already in love with you before, even before knowing about the infertility, since the day we reconnected at the cafe. How? Do you remember the 2 weeks we spent having dinner together before I made you the proposal? I was already madly in love, but I was afraid of ruining our friendship. The story of the infertility was almost an excuse my subconscious found to keep you close to me. If I had known I could have children normally, I probably would have taken months to gather the courage to tell you I was in love." "Are you serious?" she asked, her heart racing. "Completely serious, and I have proof," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "I bought this 3 days after our first dinner, weeks before I knew about the supposed infertility. I already knew I wanted to marry you." Inside the box was the most beautiful engagement ring she had ever seen, a 2-carat solitaire that sparkled under the hospital lights. "Elara Miller, will you marry me? Not because we have a child together, not because of contracts or inheritances, but because I have loved you since I was 8 years old, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." The proposal made right there in the neonatal ICU, with Gabriel sleeping a few feet away, was the most emotional moment of her life. "Yes," she replied, without hesitating for a second. "Yes, I want to marry you." What a turn of events. Were you surprised by Ethan's confession? What do you think about his proposal in the hospital? Tell us in the comments. A family complete. Gabriel was discharged from the hospital weighing 7 pounds, strong and healthy like any full-term baby. His arrival home was magical. Ethan had transformed the nursery into a work of art, with handmade white furniture, hand-painted wallpaper with clouds and birds, and a musical mobile that played the lullaby they always sang to him during pregnancy. "Welcome home, my prince," Elara whispered, placing Gabriel in the crib for the first time. The wedding took place 3 months later, in an intimate ceremony in the mansion's garden, decorated with thousands of white and yellow flowers. Elara wore a simple but elegant wedding dress from designer Paloma Rose, which cost $15,000, and carried Gabriel in her arms throughout the ceremony. Today, we are not only uniting 2 people in marriage, but celebrating the birth of a family that has been blessed by true love, the priest said, as the 3 of them looked at each other with infinite emotion. Richard, who had miraculously recovered from cancer after experimental treatment in the United States, held Gabriel during the party and told all the guests, "This child is the future of our company. But more important than that, he is proof that love always finds a way to happen." During the newlyweds' dance in the illuminated garden, with Gabriel sleeping peacefully in the arms of his great-grandmother Betty, everyone knew they were witnessing a true love story. 2 years later, on a sunny Sunday morning, Elara woke up feeling familiar nausea. Ethan rushed to the bathroom. "What's wrong, love?" he asked, appearing at the door with Gabriel crawling behind him. "I think I'm pregnant again," she said, showing him the positive test. But this time naturally. Ethan picked her up and spun her around the house while Gabriel clapped, not quite understanding the celebration. "2 children," he said, kissing her passionately. "Gabriel from destiny, and this one from nature. Both from love," she corrected, touching her belly that would soon start to grow again. "Our family is complete." And it was. Gabriel grew up surrounded by love, becoming an intelligent and affectionate child who adored playing in the same park where his parents met. His little sister Sophia was born 9 months later, with her mother's hazel eyes and her father's mischievous smile. At the company, Ethan became one of the most respected businessmen in the country, but he always managed to get home in time for family dinner. Elara returned to teaching, now at a private school she founded herself, specializing in humanized early childhood education. And every night, before going to sleep, they would pass by the children's room and silently give thanks for having found their way to each other. "Do you regret anything?" Ethan asked one night, as they watched Gabriel and Sophia sleeping. "Nothing," Elara replied, snuggling into his arms. "Not the contract, not the confusion, not the suffering. Because all of that brought us here, to our perfect family, to our forever love," she corrected. And they kissed right there, in the children's room, knowing they had built something that would last for all eternity. And so, What began as a desperate commercial agreement transformed into the greatest love story either of them could have imagined, proving that sometimes destiny uses the most winding paths to lead two twin souls to each other, and that true love always finds a way to overcome all difficulties. And so we come to the end of the story of Alara and Ethan, two childhood friends who discovered that true love always finds a way to happen, even through the most unexpected paths. Thank you all for following this story to the end. I hope you were as moved as I was telling it. If you enjoyed it, please leave a heartfelt like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone special. Until the next story.